It was the morning of June 10, 1991, in the peaceful mountain town of South Lake Tahoe, California. The air was cool and quiet, the sun just beginning to rise above the tall pine trees as 11-year-old Jaycee Lee Dugard walked toward her school bus stop. She wore her favorite pink jacket and carried a small backpack filled with homework and her sketchbook. Her mother, Terry Probin, had already left for work, while her stepfather, Carl Probin, watched her from the doorway as she disappeared up the hill. It was a route she took every day, familiar and safe. But that morning, safety was an illusion. As Jaycee reached the top of the hill, a gray car slowed beside her. Inside sat a man and a woman she had never seen before. Without warning, the man leaned out of the window, fired a stun gun, and pulled her into the car. Carl saw everything from a distance: the flash, the fall, the car speeding away. He sprinted after it, shouting her name, but within seconds it was gone. Jaycee had vanished. The town was shaken. Within hours, police arrived, roadblocks went up, helicopters combed the woods, and volunteers spread through the hills with flashlights and hope. Her school friends cried, her mother pleaded for her return, and her face appeared on every TV screen in California. But there were no witnesses, no clues, and no trail to follow. It was as though she had disappeared into thin air. The case soon went cold, and the years dragged on. But Jaycee was alive. She had been taken to the home of Phillip and Nancy Garrido in Antioch, California, about 150 miles away. Phillip was a convicted sex offender who had been released from prison only a few years earlier. Behind his house stood a maze of fences, tents, and sheds, a hidden world where he kept Jaycee captive. Her new reality was small, silent, and terrifying. The first days were filled with fear and confusion. The stun gun had left burns on her skin, and she had no idea where she was. Garrido brought her food and blankets but spoke in strange, delusional tones about religion, destiny, and how God had chosen her to be there. He told her the outside world was dangerous and that no one was looking for her. Over time, she began to believe it. As weeks turned into months and months into years, Jaycee's life was confined to the backyard. The fences were too high to climb, and the doors were always locked. The Garridos made her use a false name, Alyssa. She wasn't allowed to speak to anyone outside, not even the neighbors. Slowly, she lost track of time. Yet somehow, she never stopped surviving. Jaycee found ways to make sense of her new world. She talked to stray cats that wandered near the compound. She kept small journals hidden under a mattress. She drew pictures of mountains and pine trees, reminders of home. At just 14 years old, Jaycee gave birth to her first child, fathered by Garrido. 2 years later, she gave birth to another daughter. Though she was still a prisoner, motherhood gave her strength. She raised her daughters with patience and care, teaching them how to read, write, and paint using old notebooks and colored pencils. She built a small classroom space in the yard and tried to create a world of learning and imagination for them, even as she remained trapped. Her daughters knew nothing of the outside world. To them, the backyard was all that existed. Jaycee's love became her shield, the thing that helped her endure the unimaginable. Over the years, there were moments when discovery seemed close, but each chance slipped away. In 2006, a neighbor reported suspicious activity at the Garrido home. Children's voices behind the fence, though Garrido was a registered sex offender. A police officer visited and spoke briefly with Garrido, who appeared calm and polite. The officer never checked the backyard. Jaycee was only a few steps away when he left. Everything changed in August 2009. Garrido arrived at the University of California, Berkeley campus to hand out religious pamphlets, bringing along the two young girls. Campus police officer Allison Jacobs noticed something strange about them. Their behavior was shy, their speech odd, and their eyes filled with confusion. When she ran Garrido's name, his criminal record appeared immediately. Concerned, she called his parole officer. Garrido was summoned to the parole office 2 days later. This time he brought his wife, the two girls, and Jaycee. At first, Jaycee introduced herself as Alyssa. She spoke quietly, choosing her words carefully, just as she had been conditioned to for years. But when officers began to separate them for questioning, Jaycee finally broke her silence. She took a deep breath and said the words that changed everything. "I am Jaycee Dugard." The room went still. After 18 years of mystery, Jaycee had been found. When police arrived at the Garrido's home, they discovered the hidden compound behind the house, a nightmare of tents, tarps, fences, and soundproof sheds. Inside were the traces of an entire stolen life: toys, books, school notebooks, and drawings. Jaycee's journals described her longing to see her mother again, her dreams of freedom, and her love for her daughters. Her rescue stunned the world. She had been missing for more than half her life, yet she had survived with courage and grace. When police told her mother that Jaycee was alive, Terry collapsed in tears. Their reunion after nearly 2 decades was heartbreaking and beautiful. A mother holding the daughter she never stopped believing was out there. Phillip and Nancy Garrido were arrested and charged with kidnapping, rape, and false imprisonment. In 2011, Phillip was sentenced to 431 years to life in prison, and Nancy received 36 years to life. Justice was finally served, but for Jaycee, the journey to healing was just beginning. After years of captivity, the world was overwhelming. Cars, crowds, lights, voices. Everything felt new. Yet Jaycee's strength amazed everyone around her. She began rebuilding her life, focusing on therapy and learning to experience freedom again. She reunited with her family, took road trips, went hiking, and enjoyed simple things most people take for granted: the smell of rain, the sound of the ocean, the feeling of walking outside without fear. In 2011, she published her memoir, A Stolen Life, telling her story in her own voice. Later she wrote, "Freedom, my book of firsts, a reflection on rediscovering life and identity after captivity." She refused to be defined by her trauma and instead became an advocate for others who suffered similar fates. Through her organization, the Jaycee Foundation, she began helping families recover from trauma, teaching them that healing is possible even after unimaginable loss. Jaycee's case also changed the justice system. It exposed flaws in how parole officers handled registered offenders and led to reforms in how missing persons investigations are conducted. Her story proved that even the smallest oversight could allow tragedy to continue, and that compassion, vigilance, and awareness can save lives. Despite everything she endured, Jaycee never lost her humanity. She once said, "I'm not defined by what happened to me. I'm defined by what I've become after it." Those words capture her spirit, the unbreakable resilience of a woman who refused to be forgotten. For 18 years, she lived behind fences and walls, cut off from everything she loved. Yet no wall could contain her courage, and no darkness could silence her hope. Jaycee Lee Dugard's story is not just about a kidnapping. It's about survival, love, and the power of the human spirit to endure the impossible and still find light on the other side.